Testing 1, 2.
Many of you remember when Bibles. Many of you
Good evening, everyone. If we could all take a seat so we can start almost on time, which is pretty good for All Saints. So as soon as everybody gets a seat, we'll begin. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Fred Daly, part of the pastoral team here at All Saints, and a warm welcome to everyone who is gathered here this evening. We know across our world, particularly in the Middle East, the terrible suffering, the terrible violence, the terrible division continues. And so I think events like this is at least time for us on a local level to be able to share together and listen to one another's hearts and to find our voices to say no to war, no to violence. Violence just breeds violence. And as a pope said years ago, Pope Paul VI, if you really want peace, you need to work for justice. And certainly that is the goal in our situation here. So good, a warm welcome to everyone. There's great desserts in the back, a couple bathrooms there in the back. There's also a plenitude of yard signs. That one side says Save Gaza and Lebanon, and the other side is Save the Hostages. So you're welcome. Paul Welch was behind that project, and feel free to take, it's good to take two, because then you can, no matter which direction people are coming, they get both. But it's a little tiny way to find our voice and let people know that that people care. So again, a very warm welcome to everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Usama Khalil. I'm a professor at Syracuse, and I'll be moderating tonight's event. So before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank the organizers, Middle East Voices, and the Syracuse Peace Council's Justice for Palestine program. And I want to especially thank Megda Bayoumi for all of her hard work in organizing the event, and also thanks to Reverend Fred Daly and Meg Cassander and the All Saints Church for hosting. Now, before I introduce our esteemed guest, I want to say a few words to frame the talk. We stand tonight in full witness of a genocide that has been live streamed to our phones, our computers, our television sets, and seared into our memories. It is a genocide that has not only been allowed to proceed by the United States and its allies, but they are active participants and are fully engaged in it. I'd like to read this statement from the acting UN humanitarian chief, Joyce Masuda. This was released on 26th of October. What Israeli forces are doing in besieged North Gaza cannot be allowed to continue. Hospitals have been hit, and health workers have been detained. Shelters have been emptied and burned down. First responders have been prevented from rescuing people from under the rubble. Families have been separated, and men and boys have been taken away by the truckload. Hundreds of Palestinians have reportedly been killed. Tens of thousands have been forced to flee yet again. The entire population of North Gaza is at risk of dying. The entire population of North Gaza is at risk of dying. Such blatant disregard for basic humanity and for the laws of war must stop. That was 7 days ago. In the past 48 hours alone, at least 84 Palestinians just in northern Gaza were killed in 2 Israeli airstrikes. 50 of those killed were children. 50 of the 84. Israel has prevented food, medicine, and humanitarian aid from entering northern Gaza, just northern Gaza, for almost 3 weeks. And today, just before we came, a senior Israeli official stated that the reason food was not entering North Gaza was because most of the population had either been, quote, evacuated, or where there was no population left, his words. There are roughly 400,000 Palestinians in Gaza. Now, earlier this week, Brown University released a study that found the United States has funded, over the past year, 70% of Israel's war. 70%. With the election only a few days away, I'd like to emphasize that this would not be possible. This would not be possible without the United States supporting, funding, deploying military forces, tons and tons of bombs. 80,000 tons of bombs have been dropped on Gaza in 1 year alone. 80,000 tons. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our genocide. Now, to talk more about the situation from a first-hand perspective, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mohammed Al-Fawad. Dr. Al-Fawad is board certified in general surgery, surgical critical care, trauma, and plastic surgery. He is a fellow of the American College of Surgeons and a fellow of the American College of Critical Care Medicine. Dr. Al-Fawad has practiced at some of the top university hospitals in the country. After completing his training in Egypt, he was a plastic surgeon at the University of California, Irvine. He then completed a burn and critical care fellowship at the University of Texas, Shriners Children's Hospital. He was the director of SUNY Upstate's Burn Center. Dr. Al-Fawad is currently an assistant professor at SUNY Upstate Medical University and an adjunct professor at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine in Middletown. Now, in February, Dr. Al-Fawad led a medical mission to Gaza with Doctors Without Borders. There's quite simply no one better to talk about this subject. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Al-Fawad.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me tonight here. It's actually my pleasure and my honor to be with you to talk and share our experience with your esteemed audience. So as you see the first slide here, can we turn lights off some? As you can see here, it says Gaza Mission 3, and that's because the organization that I went with had 2 missions prior to the one I went on. I have no financial interest or conflict of interest with any of the organizations that I'm going to talk about. I'm completely, entirely an independent physician, and also there are some graphic pictures and videos, so I really want to warn people beforehand, so be prepared. The talk today is going to be in 4 parts. The first part, we're going to be talking about the geographic perspective, so everybody understand where is Rafah, where is Khan Yunis, where is Gaza Strip, where is Egypt, because a lot of people don't really know the real geography. And when we say that, shame on Egypt or Jordan not to let supplies to go in, you need to understand that the proximity is actually what's leading to that conclusion, that this is something inevitable and should happen. So that's the first part of my lecture. The second part of my lecture is going to be about our mission. Going to give just a quick review over what we did over the 12 days in Gaza. Then we're going to talk about the medical crisis and then the humanitarian crisis. And you will feel, as I did, why it's legitimate and it's fair to describe it as a man-made. So, without further ado, let's go in. This is the map of the world as we know it. And I just want to bring your attention to that area which we know as the Middle East. And if we go further with a zoom in, this red square is Egypt, and that area here is the land, the Holy Land, which a lot of people are claiming to be theirs. But let's go through the discussion here one slide at a time. I call it Palestine, some people call it Israel, some people call it the Holy Land. Regardless of the name, it's just next to the Egyptian border. I'm going to do another zoom in. So here's Egypt. This is the Mediterranean Sea, this is the Red Sea, this is Sinai Peninsula, and this is Palestine. Now, you see that little tiny strip up there? This is Gaza Strip, and this is the West Bank. 2 isolated islands within a larger area called Israel, and this is supposed to be one country, okay? Now, you can see here, if we zoom in closer, this is the shared border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. So here, if you look further, this is basically Palestine back in the 1947, 67, and 2020. The green resembles, or actually represent, the area that was owned, inhabited by the Palestinian, and as you can see, there's a continuous ongoing erosion of that. Even the West Bank is now fragmented into small areas. Now, a lot of people would say the Palestinians were offered their land, a two-state solution back in 1947 or 1948 by the UN, but they refused it, and they just turned the shoulder to that. Well, that is true. But people don't look into what's in between the lines. People don't say or ask why Palestinians did that. And if you look here, you will figure it out very quickly. Palestinians were about 70% of the population 1947 and 48. Guess how much of the land was given to them? 42%. The Jewish population at that time, they were only 30%, and they were given almost 60% of the land. That's reason number one, they refused. Reason number two, look at this map here. You got 3 isolated islands, and just in that year, another country got its independence in Asia. We all know it, India. And when the Brits left India, they broke it off into 3 areas. Central area, which is India, 2 smaller areas, one to the east, one to the west. They call the one to the west Pakistan, and the one to the east, East Pakistan. Who's in the right sense or state of mind that would agree to have a country that's laying too far apart in 2 pieces? Because history showed them that soon after that, the East Pakistan declared independence, and now it's a whole different country called Bangladesh. So basically, you're just preparing these 3 sections to be broken off into 3 independent smaller states. And let alone look at the Gaza Strip back then and look at it now. So there's a systematic, ongoing erosion into the Palestinian land. And that's why it's called an occupied territory. Now, we'll go further in. This is Gaza. It actually made of 5 different sections, or cities, or parts. The northern part, and then this is called Gaza. This is called Deir el-Balah, or the middle part. This is Khan Yunis, and this is Rafah area. And this is the shared border between Egypt and Gaza. There are 7 crossings to get in Gaza. Now keep in mind, this small territory, which is about 10 by 40 miles, has about 2.3 billion people. This map is old. This is from, I think it's about 10 years old, where population was 1.5. It's actually from 2007. So you can imagine that only way to get in and out is through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a 7th one that's not on the map here, all controlled by Israel, except one between Egypt and Rafah. Nothing to happen here, and this whole area is the border with Israel. So it's a true besieged area. Okay? The reason why I'm saying this is because when we got to Gaza, the situation prior to the start of the war was not peachy. It's not that they had the best technology in medicine and then all of a sudden the war broke off. No, they were very depleted to start off. And the situation was compounded and made even worse by the addition of the war. Now, this is a map drawn to us the night we got together in Cairo before going to Gaza. And as you can see here, these are the main medical posts. So you have the Indonesian hospital, you have Al-Shifa hospital, then you have, this is the hospital we were at, which is the Gaza European Hospital. All these hospitals are out of commission. There are only about 1 or 2 that were actually functional. None of them is trauma hospital, by the way. The one we were at was not a designated or prepared to be a trauma hospital. Okay. Now, 20 plus years ago, I was a resident in Texas, and during my rounds, my attending asked me a question. Where's that patient from? So I went back, asked the patient, and came back, and I told the attending. Patient said he's from Palestine. And that was his immediate response. Is there such thing as Palestine? It actually shocked me, because that put me on a quest for many, many years that I decided to really find the truth. Is there such thing as Palestine, or is it just a symbolic name? And this is what I found over the past 2 decades. This is actually Haifa in 1925. That's 23 years before the Nakba. You can't get more prosperous than that. This is a town to the north of Palestine. It's north of what's known now as Tel Aviv. It's on the Mediterranean, obviously. This is the bus station in Java, which is another town to the south of Tel Aviv. This is back in 45. This is another square in Java in 1935. This is again Java, south of Tel Aviv, 1934. You can see how modern the country is. And this is actually Tel Aviv in 1928. Modern people, modern life, civilization in there. This is a street in Jerusalem back then in 1938. This is the traffic in 1936. This is Rafah train station that takes the train from Cairo all the way to Jerusalem in the 1930s. And guess what? That's an airport in 1920 in Kalandia, which is a northern suburb of Jerusalem to the north. In 1920, how many airports were in the Middle East back then? Go figure it out. Now, some people would say, well, that was just under the British Mandate. There was no such a structure. There was no such a government. It was just an area given that name. Great. What do you call this? This is a Palestinian currency, and it's £1. When I say Palestine, I mean Palestine that had Jews, Christians, Muslims, atheists, Durzite, Catholic, everybody living together, just like here in the States. You get Hindus, you get Sikh, you get Buddhists, you get Muslims, you get Christians, all living together. That's Palestine. And you can see it here. It's written in English, it's written in Hebrew, and it's written in Arabic. So everybody can read it, everybody can live together. I don't think I need to make much comment on this. It's already self-explanatory. 1927, that's a coin. A British passport that says clearly Palestine under the British Mandate. And how about this? William Shakespeare, you go back 400 years ago, in Othello, in Act 4, Scene 3, where Desdemona and Emilia talking to each other, and Emilia saying, I know a lady in Venice that would have walked barefoot to Palestine for a touch of his nether lip, of his lower lip.
If you remember when Bibles were like this in homes and in churches, every church had a Bible like this. Every Christian family had a Bible like this, and they put their family genealogy, the weddings, baptisms and burials. It was all put inside the Bible, and you passed it down generation to generation. This particular Bible was published in 1905. Now, the reason I brought it out is that I want to show a map that's in this Bible. Now, mind you, the Schofield Bible was not published until 1913.
Right.
And I have in my office an original 1913 Schofield, which was the introduction of the Zionist Masonic heresies about a future state of Israel and separating the church from Israel and all that rapture stuff. That's where it came from. It was a Masonic Zionist heresy that was introduced into the American churches in 1913. This is a 1905 Bible.
Pre-Schofield.
Pre-Schofield, with no Schofield notes in it. So, you open it up, and this is on page 13. I mean, this thing's big. I want to show you. Here is, here is a map of the Holy Land. And it says, what?
Oh, Palestine of the Holy Land.
They misspelled Israel.
No.
Palestine.
Palestine.
Huh.
And all these Christian Zionists that tell me, Rick, there's never been a Palestine.
All right, so here's a still.
There it is.
Let's zoom in and show you here.
Yeah. So, yeah, you hear these people like John Hagee, there's never
long
been a
video, so we're just
Palestine.
gonna skip
Well, look at this Bible map from 1905.
And most Bibles.
Yes.
Now, this is, believe it or not, this is the visa for Shimon Peres. Do you know who he is? He's the prime minister of Israel in the 1980s, 1990s, and the president later. And it says clearly, Government of Palestine, Department of Immigration. And it's written in English, immigration here, and in Hebrew, and in Arabic. And this is his own work permit. His first job as a cleaner in 1935. Again, it says Government of Palestine. Okay? If you need to know more about the history, I would love to direct you to two documentaries. They're both for wars, unfortunately. The first one is called Tantura, Tantura, and the second one is called Investigating War Crimes in Gaza, Al Jazeera Investigating. Why these are so credible documentaries? Very simple reason. The Tantura is actually an interview done by Israeli producers inside Israel with people in their 80s and 70s to tell their accounts about the Tantura massacre in 1948, in June 11th, 1948. Their own words, their own description, in their own land, at their own comfort. And the other one basically is nothing but a compilation of social media accounts and posts of the soldiers in this war. They just put them together. There's no editing. It's just them posting their own actions in real time, live to the entire universe. And you can now imagine and connect the dots between 1948 and 2024. So if you need to know the history, you can go back to these two documentaries. Now, let's go to the second section about our mission. I was really humbled and honored to lead these 20 brave people, 10 Jordanian, 2 French, and 8 Americans, into Gaza for a mission during the war. Basically, the two organizations that sponsored this was Rahma Worldwide and PAB. Rahma was mainly responsible for the logistics, but PAB was mainly for the funding. And between the two, we were able to have a successful mission. Now, again, it was a multidisciplinary team. We had general surgeons, we had plastic surgeons, we had orthopedics, we had maxillofacial, we had anesthesia, we had peds surgeons, we had ER resident, a lot of different specialties to cover all the needs as much as we can. And these are the nationalities, and we did more than 230 surgeries during our 12-day between February 8th and February 20th. So we convened in Cairo on the night of February 6th, had a meeting with the organization, listening to what to do, what not to do, what's allowed, what's not allowed, all the rules and so on and so forth. And we signed up our liability, so in case anything happens, the organization is not liable. And then the next morning, we start packing up our 4 buses. We had boxes filled with medications, orthopedic, instrument supplies, kids' clothes, kids' shoes, candies, that sort of thing. And the plan was to commute by ground from Cairo all the way by ground to Al Ismailia, and then go under a tunnel underneath Suez Canal that connects the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, then head north and then take the coastal road all the way to Gaza and then get in. In theory, that shouldn't take more than 4 or 5 hours, but this is what happened. As soon as we got close to the tunnel, we were banned from proceeding. Reason? Unknown. The clearance is not there. Basically, prior to our travel, all our passports, license numbers, demographics, etc., were submitted to 3 different authorities, the Israeli authority, the Palestinian authority, and the Egyptian authority, and we were all approved to go in. None of us was posing any issue or causing any problems. But when we got to the tunnel, we stopped. They did not allow us to proceed. Waited and waited and waited, and finally, towards sunset, we could not proceed, so we decided to stay there in that town. I invited the whole team for a dinner just to break the ice off and reduce the tension, and then next morning, we were able to make the trip. When you look at Google Map, this whole distance will take 3 hours and 7 minutes. We started at 10 o'clock, but we got there around 6 p.m. Why? Because every few miles, you have to be stopped by a security checkpoint. Your passports have to be screened, and just a lot of security, layers and layers and layers of security. At the end, we were able finally to make it. Now, as we get closer to Rafah, this is what we saw. Miles and miles and miles of thousands and thousands and thousands of 18-wheelers loaded with food, aid supplies, etc., but nothing was allowed to get in. Now, the question is why? We all would ask that question. The answer is very simple, because something illegal could be smuggled in. That's very logic. That's legitimate. But the counter question to this is, why can't someone assign an entity to inspect these trailers and allow what's legal to get in? And I've seen videos of food after getting into Gaza that has maggots in it. Why? Because this is not the way it's supposed to be stored. The video is about 3 or 4 minutes long, but I just want to show you that this is, again, it's a handmade crisis, not just the war, but it's actually exponentially duplicated, triplicated, quadruplicated by man-made planning. Why? That's what we need to ask. Anyways, finally we made it to Rafah. We unloaded the buses, we went through the borders, and then here we are doing our screening to go through, and then finally we made it to Palestine. We got in, we were received by the authorities in the healthcare section there, and we took a picture, and then we headed to the hospital. We loaded the buses on the other side, heading to the hospital. Now keep in mind, the drones are hovering 24/7. You hear them. Nothing moves unless it's permitted with coordination with the IDF. Otherwise, you get targeted immediately. So we were supposed to be there sooner, but we got delayed. So as we got delayed, we had to ask for re-coordination to make sure that our motorcade won't get targeted on our way from the border to the hospital. So you can imagine the tension we were living in. No one on the streets. We're just driving. There's nothing moving around except us. And we were not sure what's going to happen. We were told that, well, we made the coordination. They're aware this is a healthcare motorcade, there's mission, and don't worry about it, but of course, you can imagine what's going on through our minds. Anyways, finally, we took some pictures at the entrance there, and here we go. We finally made it to the hospital, European Gaza Hospital. This is our room, one of our rooms. We were 20, so we're divided into a group of 4. Each group is 5 people living in one room. Now, we shared this room on a floor with 7 other rooms accommodating families. Each family is about 4 to 6 people. The entire 8 rooms were sharing only 2 bathrooms. So we were about 40 to 50 people sharing only 2 bathrooms. Okay? And this is us, because we were in luxury, considering the rest of the population. This is our food. This is our breakfast and dinner for the entire 12 days for my room.
Tuna, I think.
So $1.
And this is corned beef.
Corned beef, tuna,
and
cheese,
some cheese.
and that's it for us.
And some bread.
And every night we get a bag of bread for the 5 of us.
I don't need this piece of paper.
Now for lunch,
Leaving off.
this is our lunch, which you get delivered to the hospital, to our mission people. Of course, WCK suspended their operations after the incidents where they were bombed. This is the water situation. Everybody gets 1 bottle of water daily. Until day 6 or 7 of the mission, no more water. There was only one faucet
in the OR.
to get
I've
drinking
got
water in the
pediatric
entire
surgeons
hospital.
and cardiac
Everybody.
surgeons. Dr. O'Day and Dr.
So we're all
Alma
filling up our
selling water.
bottles here.
Look at this.
This
What
is
a
for
team
washing.
effort.
This is salt
highly
water from the
qualified
sea. We can't
surgeons
use it.
filling
But
water,
this is the only
mashallah.
drinkable water that we have.
This is like
We have to line up to get
Gaza.
water for ourselves.
You're not so
So the day starts around 8 o'clock in the morning. This is our coordinator. We head to the CEO office. I do some debriefing. We take some comments, some complaints, some issues, and then we head to surgery after that. This is Dr. Ndal. He's one of our anesthesiologists. These are some of the patients that we saw. And again, I'm warning you, it's very graphic. And I'm warning you, many of these pictures are children, because 60 to 80% of our patients that we saw there were not adults, were kids, young kids, okay? So this is a child. They had burn. This is another girl that I treated there. They had burn of her entire bilateral lower extremity and arms. This is another kid with burn. And this is one of the cases that you could document for chemical burn, meaning the explosion was not just merely secondary to fire. There were chemicals involved in the explosion, something like white phosphorus. Now, this patient, his name is Mohammed. He got injured. He was left on the street for 5 days. No one can come close to him. If anyone comes close to him, will be sniped. After 5 days, when the IDF cleared the area, the ambulance went in quickly and picked him up and brought him to the hospital. Both legs were rotten, got amputated. When I got to him, this is how he looked. I took him to the OR, debrided all that dead tissue. 2 days later, he passed away. He died. Young kids with no injuries except one gunshot wound to the head. Assassination snipe style. No other injuries. This is not a girl or a boy pulled from under the rubble. No. Completely, entirely healthy. There's nothing else in him. Okay? Just the head. Shot to the head. More and more of those. Same one. Here. Here. This is an adult. This is a patient I took care of. Just one bullet to the head. Nothing else. And we're talking children. 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, girls, boys. Now, this man has a story. This is Mr. K, 71 years old. They called me to go and take a look at his hand. This hand had a wound on the back of his hand here. And at that point, when I went to see him, he was missing an arm and a leg. And I thought maybe diabetes and, gangrene and all that sort of stuff. But come to find out that the guy is perfectly healthy. He was completely healthy for 6 weeks prior to this. What happened is he was walking, got arrested by the IDF, taken, blindfolded, moved from one place to another, blindfolded, doesn't know where, doesn't know why. And then they took the blindfolds off his face and threw him out of the car to find himself facing a group of sailors, each one holding a chain, a bat, a machete, a dagger, whatever. They start beating on him until he lost consciousness. Then he was taken to a hospital in Israel, got one arm, one leg amputated. When he woke up, he was missing an arm and a leg, and then he was thrown back to Gaza. That's his story. This is the team that was working with us. Those are all medical students, first, second, third year. And remember, when we got to the hospital, there was no consultants, there was no specialist. Everybody either killed, arrested, or fled. Only residents, medical students, and techs. And this is the manpower of the hospital. These are the people operating on the injured people in Gaza. And these are all volunteers. Nobody's getting paid anything. They're just working for, seriously, 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day, delivered by any mission that gets there. Okay? Now, this is Dr. Basalha. He's a plastic surgeon from Jordan who was my counterpart there. I want you to pay a little bit of attention to this guy here. We're going to get back to him in a minute. On the last day, we decided, to throw a party for the kids. We got them all the candies, all the kids' shoes, some balloons and stuff like that, just to kind of relieve the stress away, because many of these kids are orphans. Many of them were pulled from under the rubble. Many of them lost their dads, their moms, their families, etc., etc. So at least we try to do something. The last night, the hospital CEO brought us to his room. Every worker in the hospital tries to get one office space to bring the family in, and that becomes their shelter. So he brought us into one of these rooms, and he kind of, as a thank you token, he gave us the kufiyah. The morning of the 19th, we're getting ready to leave, taking pictures, and now I'm taking a picture before I leave Gaza. And I just want you to pay a very close attention to this sign here. Does anyone see any problem with it? Does anyone see any issue with this sign? Could there be a militia hiding in there, or a bomb, or headquarters, or any of that? No, it's just a piece of plastic. It doesn't even light. So the question becomes, why is this? Why? What is the point? Does that sound to you like someone in active defense? It's a piece of plastic, for God's sake. And he's singing.
So it's now about 6:03.
We couldn't leave, so we had to go back to the hospital. That's me again.
Tuesday, February
I lost track.
20th, 2024. I'm in Gaza, and we're going to be leaving today after we tried to leave yesterday. You can hear the bombing ongoing. And that's basically the life here, every night, every morning, nonstop. Has been a great experience, and I'm definitely coming back. definitely coming back. And inshallah, Palestine will be free. Inshallah.
Sorry, we all got sick back there. So next morning, trial 2 to leave. We actually, and the kids are just waving to us. Finally, we made it. We were able to cross the border and go back to Egypt. And that's basically the conclusion of our mission. So 230 surgeries. Plastics did the most, 98. I did 35 out of those. And it was a great experience. Now, let's talk about the medical crisis. These are 2 girls that came to us from under the rubble. We could not save them. That was the night where they were releasing, I think, a couple of hostages in Rafah, and they bombed and killed like hundreds to get 2 out. It was sometime like in the middle of February. So anyways, so this is how we resuscitate patients. You can see, this is the ER, by the way. This is their ER. There are no beds. We're doing this on the floor. And not just resuscitating patients on the floor. Patients are being intubated on bed frame. There are no beds. There are no resources. Okay? Look at the instruments in the OR table. They're all torn, old, and blood-stained, and everything is ancient there. This is an ancient anesthesia machine that was there. Betadine was the only thing we had to wash our hands with, scrub with, prepare with, do dressing to the wound with, and that's the only thing we had. On day 7 or 8, we ran out of gowns. I had to operate with just gloves. And this is my good friend, orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Ziad, holding the headlight for me, so working on a hand of a patient. This is also one of our cardiothoracic surgeons from Jordan. He's saying here that he's doing a thoracoscopy. He's going into the chest of this patient with no drapes or surgical gowns. This is basically what we had to put patients on, some chalks. These are not OR drapes at all. Even if it's a very bloody procedure, patient is still exposed because we don't have enough to cover the patient as properly as we should. Now, this is my good friend, Dr. Mimi. He's a maxillofacial surgeon from New Jersey, who's actually about to operate on a patient on a body bag because we don't have drapes. This is their sharp containers. It's a box of carton. Does nothing, but this is what they have. This is what they had. That's their baseline before the war. Everything blood-stained, old. This is me. I'm actually debriding the left thigh, the back of the left thigh of a young girl. Her name is Maya. She was 8 years old because she got pus from her wounds, and we didn't have anesthesia. She was screaming, and she was just getting some sedation while we're doing this. Another little girl, her name is Warda, and she came in after an explosion, and you can see her, we're debriding her foot. She's got exposed bone with no anesthesia. We're just cleaning up with sharps, but she's still awake. Now listen to this. We're taking an ortho frame out of his leg. Awake. Look at how much he's shaking. Would any physician dare to do this here? Absolutely not. So why we consider treating patients differently? Why we're accepting this to their kids and this is not acceptable to our kids? That's another question. This is another lady This is not a war injury. Basically, she had a little tiny zit on her eyelid, but because she couldn't get to care, it ended up eating up her entire upper eyelid from infection. So we ended up doing a reconstructive surgery and reconstructing the upper lid for her. The ambulance drivers, they have no place to go. They're not getting paid, they don't get sleep, they don't get food, they sleep in the cars and whatever food they can get their hands on. And they are, by the way, #1 target over there. We were told that there was a group of 3, I think, European physicians on a mission were cleared to go from point A to point B to be driven by the ambulance to drop them off there to another hospital and come back. The ambulance drivers refused because they knew the second they drop off these physicians and the second they leave immediately after that, they're going to get shot dead. They're going to be left alone until they drop off these physicians, and when they turn around back, they're going to get killed. So they refuse to take him anywhere. Now watch this carefully. It's alarming that it needs maintenance. It's not working well, but that's what we have. This is the ventilator, and that's for a little kid, again, shot in the head, no other injuries, little girl. Unfortunately, she was getting ready to go to surgery, but she died shortly after. And you can look at all the machines, all the ventilators, monitors, they're outdated, they're not functional well, but we had to count on them. Another girl that came in that night from under the rubble, and she also was dead. Now let's talk about the humanitarian disaster. Malnutrition. So these are the patients there. Those in the ICU on a ventilator that's not working well, they're not getting fed at all because even the doctors can't get food. I had one of my mission people who just got his lunch sitting to eat it, and there was another local physician sitting at the end of the room kind of looking at the food on and off, and then when he asked him, are you okay? He said, yeah, I haven't seen meat for about 4 months. So he ended up sharing the meal with him. I'm talking about the doctors. These patients have no families to bring them food. There's no food in the hospital to feed even the people, working people in there. So you end up with malnutrition. We had to get, remember the box that had canned meat and a tuna? We had to get some of these boxes, mix it with water, and then shoot it in syringes through their tubes to give him a little bit some nutrition to help him heal. Okay? Again, you gotta keep asking yourself why. Why? Why? There's no reason for that. Another example of malnutrition here, you can see this is one of the physician's family in one of the office space used as a shelter. This is their meal. Bread, a little bit of pasta. Dates, tuna, bread. That's a luxury, by the way. Everybody's sleeping where they work. Because A, they have no home to go to. It's either demolished or bombed, and they can't, there's no safety walking out of the hospital. So everybody trying to stay in the hospital using it as a shelter. Another doctor with his kids in an office space. This is their meal, some mashed tomato and bread and tuna. Here you go. This is their stove, doing some noodles. This is another physician using another office space with his family. This is their only bed. Kids sleep on the floor. And before I came back, he asked me for a big favor. Guess what that was? To bring him a tent, so he and his family can live more decently than this. This is the hall of the hospital on the second floor. You can see the hall has been sectioned off by many, 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 many families. Torn pieces of blankets and sheets, 3 to 4 feet apart, and holding a whole entire family, 4, 5, 6 people, in that little tiny space. See here, right and left. Here you go. People sleeping on the floor. You walk in the hospital, go into the OR room, You can see right and left, each one of these sections is actually an entire family. This is a family. This is a family. This is a family. This is a family. They have no other place to go. They've been displaced over and over and over and over. Go to the north, come to the south, go to the east, back to the west. This is a family. I've seen a family actually living on the landing of stairs. An entire family, a grandma, a mother, a father, and a few kids. They just sectioned off a stair landing, and they're just staying behind it. Can anybody translate what she's saying? She's saying, so again, same situation. People sleeping on the floor of the hospital. Now, a few months back, this hospital got evacuated. So all these people got displaced. I don't know where they went. What the little girl was saying was Debdubab shekel, meaning I'm selling my bunny for 1 shekel. So she's offering her little bunny to get some money. Here, people sleeping on the floor. Another people sleeping on the floor inside the hospital. You look outside, it's not even pretty. Same thing. Tents, 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 tents. Same thing. Now, people, there's no electricity. So what people tend to do is anybody that has a solar panel, now it becomes a job that he can charge some cell phones for a little bit of pennies so he can afford to get some food for his family. Another one? Okay, now before I run this video, this is the men's bathroom, this is the women's bathroom, and I just want you to see how many people lined up for water, for this truck of water, just to get drinking water. There's another line back there. And remember the 2 bathrooms I showed you? Now look at how many tents are there. Miles and miles. Each tiny one of those is an entire family. This is a family here. This is a family here. This is a family here. This is a family here.
This is one of the refugee camps.
No one deserved to live like this. Period.
Where people just living in tents.
The video is long, but just for the sake of time, I'm gonna run it.
Tents, just like pieces of plastic put together.
Miles and miles. This is next to the hospital, by the way. Now, pay attention to this little kid here. They're selling water on the street to get some money. He can barely carry the freaking bottle of water. He can't carry it. And look at the shoes he's wearing. Who would accept this to his own kid? Now, this picture was sent to me by one of our coordinators. After they allowed people to go back to the north, he went back trying to find his house. Good luck. Where is the house here? You can't even find it. And after he was able to barely locate it, even their own single tree, it was destroyed. Why would you destroy a tree, for God's sake? What harm is in it? Now, back to this kid. His name is Abdul Rahman Al-Najjar. He was a third-year medical student. Very bright kid. His English is superb. You would think that he grew up here. He was arrested by the IDF, and they released him. They didn't find anything against him. The day he was released, the officer or the soldier told him, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a medical student." So he told him, "We're not going to let you finish. We're going to destroy your future." So he challenged him back and told him, "No, I will finish. I will go to the States, and I'm gonna become a very prominent neurosurgeon like no one else, and I'm gonna be very successful." On August 31st, 1:45 a.m., he was bombed in his house sleeping at night. He died. That's him. So the take-home message is that we need to question ourselves. And I'm not giving you any answers. I just want you to keep thinking about this and try to find the truth for yourselves. Is it a war defense? Is it a war offense? Or is it a genocide? Or is it even a war? You need to come to that conclusion. But first, find where the truth is. My team and I promised the kids there that we're going to go back. That little girl in red, her name is Melek. When I left, I asked her, what do you want me to bring you when I come back? To wish anything. Take a guess. What did she wish for? A bag of chips. Yes, that was her wish. I want to have a bag of chips. Thank you.
So we have some cards were passed around if you want to ask some questions. We have some time for questions. I have a few already that we can, if you want to pass those up. Dr. Lafar, thank you so much, and thank you for your commitment. Actually, can we have a couple I can throw at you. We're going to have them pass some cards up. But you talked about the white phosphorus. Can you talk about the weapons that you encountered that have been used, their impact, what you were seeing that's been used on civilians?
So I did not see any weapons firsthand.
Obviously, but the impact of them, rather.
I'm sorry? Yeah.
The impact of those weapons.
Yeah. So
If the questioners could use a mic because it's live.
Sure.
So, great. And make sure it's. Just make sure you hold it close. Very close.
Oh, thank you. So basically, let me make that disclosure. We didn't see any soldiers, didn't see any militia, we didn't see anyone in combat or anything like that. But the burns I saw are not just a flame burn. You saw a couple of pictures. The flame burn causes basically just a sort of what we call third degree. But that kind of tissue reaction, especially on the second or third picture that I showed you, this is actually chemicals burning into the skin and the tissue underneath it. So that tells me that they are not just using simple weapons like simple rockets to explode buildings and demolish houses and stuff. There are some chemicals involved in the attacks as well. And I've seen it more than once with other patients as well. And there's a likelihood that white phosphorus has been used, but I haven't investigated this myself. So I cannot really say anything about it.
So on that note, when you left in February, the death count, the official death count, is roughly over 43,000 right now. There's been at least one study that suggested it's 4 times as high. There are other suggestions that it's 5 times as high, based on your medical context there, based on your experience. What can you tell us about the total number dead? And as we consider that, the population of Gaza pre-invasion was 2.3 million, 2.5 million.
So from my personal account, I can tell you that there are definitely many, many people that have not been rescued or picked up from under the rubble, for sure. Okay, they don't have the equipments even to do that. And when we were there, you could see buildings that actually down around you, and they haven't been removed or and the belongings are still there. So there are people definitely down there, but they haven't been picked up. So I think when the war is over with, and the dust settles, and they start looking at the missing, the dead, the injured, et cetera, the numbers will go exponentially high, very high.
So we're also heading into winter. And I know you're a surgeon, but we're heading into winter. You talked about the malnourishment. Can you talk about these other risk factors that we're now facing that will also impact the population? Assuming that once we start to find more and more, we assume 4 to 5 times as many under the rubble. what else are Palestinians facing, considering the conditions you just showed?
So basically, right now, as we all know, North Gaza is under a very strict siege. Food, water, electricity, everything is not allowed to get in. And I just want to point one tiny thing to you guys. We all seen it more than once. I'm not sure how many registered that and translated into what it really means. We all saw when the war started, when the IDF generals came up and said, we're going to cut off water, electricity, food, medications, internet, etc. We all saw it, right? It was actually on the running banner of every single media and social media. Did anyone try to think about what is this? What does that mean? Now, let me give you another perspective. Ukraine has been in war for more than 2 years. Did you or would you expect Russia to come up and say, we're going to cut off water, electricity, medications, food, and internet from Ukraine? Would you expect that to happen? No. Why? One simple reason. Ukraine is a sovereign country. The only way you could have such control and such power to take electricity, food, water, medications, internet, air out of another territory is when you control it. And that control is designated the name occupation. There's no other term for it. So that's basically a public admission of occupation. And this is how I translated it. Okay? So when you think about this, there's no way around it. You're telling me that you have such control of that area to the point where you can stop water, food, electricity, and medications, then you're occupying this area, period. There's no ifs or buts. How are you gonna refute that?
So you're trained as a burn specialist.
True.
And a plastic surgeon. Have you encountered anything like what you saw in your career in those 12 days? What's the closest, I guess?
So this is basically, I don't have long experience in medical missions in wars. Yet, 2 or 3 of the folks that I had with me, one of them with Dr. Brown, has been doing this for 20, 25 years. Has been to Serbia, has been to Afghanistan, has been to Syria, many, many places. And over and over and over, they keep saying, we never seen anything like this. From those folks that have the expertise and experience and record of going to all over the place, starting from Serbia back in the early 1990s, to Afghanistan, to Syria, to Yemen, to other places, Haiti. They never seen any kind of destruction, man-made destruction with that caliber.
So you ended with Dr. Najjar. At least 166 physicians have been killed, at least. Mm-hmm. And we know many of them were specifically targeted, like Dr. Najjar. Can you talk a little bit about what you were hearing from the physicians you were working with, medical students, nurses? You talked a little bit about the ambulance, the first responders. What you were hearing from them about the conditions and what they were experiencing?
So all of them know for a fact that they are a prime target. Starting from the CEO of the hospital all the way down to anyone that has a scrub. So if someone wants to leave the hospital to go see his family, he has to change out of scrubs to look like a civilian. I'm not a medical personnel. Okay, even if you're a medical student, an ambulance driver, a tech, a nurse, a physician, you're a target. You're a prime target. So that's number one. Number two, all the senior people in the hospital, we saw none of them. None of them. Like, we had only 1 or 2 mid-level, mid-career physicians, but the rest of them are either medical students, residents, at most someone who just finished his residency 1 or 2 years ago. That's it. These are the people running the show. And when you keep asking, who's your senior? Oh, he got arrested. Oh, he got killed. Oh, we don't know. Oh, he fled. Oh, he went to the south. Or he did this. They know they're targeted. So this is what we saw in there. Even the ambulance drivers, and I told you about the story, they refused to take a medical mission to another hospital because they knew on their way back they're going to be bombed.
You mentioned, and it was, I think, shocking for everyone, even if you know the stories, to see the videos about the lack of medical supplies, the lack of anesthesia,
Absolutely.
the lack of antiseptics to help clean burn victims.
Absolutely.
How did you cope with that? What did you do? And of course, it's as medical professionals coming from here and then going there, but how did you cope with that there, and what are the patients?
So basically, we were practicing, as I always say, the 18th century medicine. Basically, you get a bat, hit someone on the head, put them to sleep so you can do the surgery. That's basically it. Kids would scream and scream and scream and scream until they stop, they faint. Then you can clean up quickly and then wrap them up. Anesthesia was not available. And as I said, equipments are outdated, even from before the war. That's one thing. The other thing is, we tried many times to bring in supplies, and these requests were denied. They were not allowed to get in. What I know now, for fact, from medical missions going in right now, if you go in with anything that's not personal to you, the team gets banned from going in. So let's say I'm going in and I have diabetes or hypertension or something, and I have like 20 tablets. Oh no, you're not taking it for yourself. You're taking extra. The whole team, go back. Some people had kids' shoes with them. Kids' shoes. They got banned from going in. You're allowed a cell phone, a laptop, your personal medications, only for the quantity that will be enough for you for the time of service, your own clothing, and that's it. If you put extra bar chocolate in your bags, your entire mission gets canceled and pushed back. That's what's happening now.
Can you talk a little bit about, just so everyone understands, you mentioned the number of checkpoints, and I think it's important for people to understand those are Egyptian checkpoints, Egyptian
Yes.
security on
Absolutely.
the way into
Yes.
Gaza, right?
Yep.
So you're stopped well before you ever get across
Sure.
the canal. Then you're stopped multiple times on
Yes.
the way into Gaza. Then it was very effective. So thank you for showing that video of the aid trucks, backed all the way back, miles and miles and miles of aid trucks. Can you talk a little bit about, and this connects to your previous point, there's not a single workable hospital right now. Almost all of them are out of commission, if not all of them out of commission in Gaza. What kind of warnings were you getting when you were in Gaza at the hospital you were at, or what were you hearing about what they were doing in other hospitals? Can you kind of fill in?
So one night, for example, the bombing is 24/7. You hear that all the times. But one night, I remember clearly, the sounds start getting closer and closer to the hospital. So I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm not sure if we're going to get a warning or not. I'm not sure if they're coming close to us. I'm not sure if the hospital is going to be targeted. I tried to call the organizations, no connections. So basically, every single hospital in the area was down, except Gaza, European hospital we were stationed at, and there was another Emirati hospital was in Rafah, and the Kuwaiti hospital. These are like 3 hospitals. Now, when I say hospital, I don't mean something like upstate. Absolutely. It's a glorified urgent care place, the Emirati and Kuwaiti. Just like a few rooms, a couple of theaters, and that's it. That's it. But the only standing hospital at that point when we were there was the European Gaza hospital. And again, it is a hospital, but it's not designated to be a trauma hospital. So you cannot get injured patients in there. We're not prepared for that. They are not prepared for that. If you have a mass casualty situation here in Syracuse, they will not take him to community hospital. They're not going to take him to St. Joe, because these are not prepared to take mass casualty situations. They're going to come to upstate. And upstate may even mobilize something from Albany or Rochester to help. So you can imagine, you have a small, tiny hospital that's not trauma, getting daily hundreds of injured people and dead people to deal with. So the situation was very dire, unfortunately.
You interacted with a lot of families.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what this is like for the families you mentioned, and we can see some, we see on the outside the living conditions, the pressure on, this has been a war on children. I think many may not realize that even of the official number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the 42,000 of the official number, the majority are women and children.
That's true. I would believe that because I've seen it.
You mentioned orphans. There's at least 20,000 children who are orphans, at least 15,000 child amputees are the numbers we keep hearing. I would, repeat that, 20,000 orphans, at least 15,000 child amputees from this war, and 20,000 children at least are missing. Those are the official numbers. Can you talk about the impact on the actual families, the impact on the kids that you interacted with? A child whose one hope is chips.
Yeah, so these kids' dreams have been degraded, very degraded. All what they need and ask for is just food. That's what they're looking for, any kind of food. Talking about amputations, it's unfortunate to say that because we did not have enough resources to help, many of wounds of the lower extremities were just quickly treated with amputation. Because otherwise, if they're gonna need complex reconstruction or repeated surgery, we can't afford that. It's only 3 or 4 OR rooms running. You can't take a patient back and forth, and you have other patients lining up to get their care. So you take the easy route and you amputate. That's what was happening. Adults and children alike, unfortunately.
And again, without anesthesia.
What's that?
The amputations were without anesthesia.
No, we're done with anesthesia, but typically when you say anesthesia, there are different grades of anesthesia.
Great, thank you.
So what they were getting is what we call either deep sedation or general anesthesia without, I don't want to go into technicalities, but let's say grade 1 through 5. 5 is the highest level of anesthetics, and 1 is the least type of anesthetics. Here, we would be providing level 5 for any of these procedures. There, we're providing 3-ish to 4, sometimes 2, depending on what we have, to do the same kind of surgeries we do in here in the States.
So there are a few questions that have come in, and I don't know how comfortable you feel about talking about this, but one is, how did your team support each other? How did you, and then support, you talked about the food as a team, but also the food situation.
Yeah.
You had other doctors who just hadn't eaten, their families hadn't eaten. How did you?
We all went back in a state of depression. There's no question about it. And thinking about the situation, the reality that we saw, we're still in connection with each other. And some of us are trying to go back, myself included, but also we decided as a group to create a WhatsApp group to keep communicating to each other, to relieve each other, and also to keep talking about what we saw in any venue possible. Because it's in my opinion, it would be a crime if I saw this and just come back and stay silent about it. This is something that people need to know. You need to understand the reality on the ground there, and not just sit at your comfort in your house watching a couple of videos or a couple of news and think that, oh, I know what's going on there. This is not what's going on there.
You mentioned that the hospital that you were at was eventually evacuated.
Yes.
I mean, that's evacuation is a pleasant term for it, right? I mean, versus forced displacement, right? The arresting of medical faculty, medical staff,
Absolutely.
Assassination of medical staff.
Go ahead.
Please.
So you saw the medical students that I showed you their picture to you. Many of them, not many, all of them, medical schools are demolished now. Okay? And many of them don't even have their certificates. So for these kids to get back on track, they don't know how to do that. Even if they go to neighbor countries, Egypt or Jordan or anywhere, to finish off their medical school, they don't have any documentation of their schooling. So you're basically destroying the present and the future for the people in this area, so they will have no hope to exist in there. That's basically it.
What do you hear from the people you knew that are back at are they back at the hospital now? Is the hospital in any working condition at all now? Is there any kind of,
So it was evacuated, hit, partially, part of it are now back to semi-functional state, and they're now working in that part of it, the Gaza hospital, the European Gaza hospital.
so we have a question, someone who has a friend in Gaza who's asking that she cannot afford diapers or diaper cream. Her baby has a bad rash. What would you recommend?
Can you repeat the question?
We have there's a woman in Gaza who cannot afford diapers or cream for her baby, and the baby has a bad rash. What can she afford? What I'm seeing here, she only has fabric strips now for a diaper. What would you recommend? Is there anything you could recommend? I mean, I know it's not necessarily your area.
I would go to the simple thing as soap and water, but it may not be present. I really don't know the answer. They're actually stopping people from taking. I'm sorry? You could do that. But the problem is that that's just an exposure to danger. Unfortunately. I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to help them medically. And I was there, and there were a lot of things that I couldn't really do. I'm sorry, we couldn't help. That's what we can.
You
And
mentioned
that's
the water situation.
The best answer to this question is for people here and elsewhere in the States to pressure our government to allow aids to get in. That's the answer. That's the answer.
So I want to build on that with this kind of final question so we can wrap up. But before we do, I want to thank you again. It was really very devastating. We're coming up on an election, so besides the pressure, one of the things you can see in some of the questions that come across is the hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
We've tried protesting, we're screaming, we're writing. What else can we do? What organizing? What hope do we have going into the election? What should we do after the election?
So I'm not a politician, but the wisdom is if people want to effect a change, they need to unify. If we are segregated, we are weightless. We have no leverage whatsoever. So it doesn't matter. I'm sorry? Okay, so what I was trying to say is anyone wants to make a change, you can't mostly, it's going to be very hard to do it single-handed. We need unification. We need solidarity. That's what we need. It doesn't matter which person you vote for or you support, or as long as, you know the theory of the fish in a net, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? So if you have a huge net and you got 1,000 fish in it, and each one is going in a different direction, they're not going to do anything. But if they all go in the same direction, they're going to drag the net down, they're going to break it, and they're going to set themselves free. That's basically it. That's basically it.
Dr. Lafar, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's been my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
I just want to say one word before we all go. We've been in war after war, and we all say we did not know. I don't think you can say that now. You all know. You all need to act on what you know. There is no, when somebody comes out and say, this war is self-defense, you need to act and you need to talk about this is not a self-defense. This is a war against people. This is genocide in clear word. So when you go out, don't say, I didn't know. You really need to make sure to keep talking to your colleague, to your friend, to your neighbor, and make sure that everybody know the heart the Palestinians are going through for over 75, 80 years now. There is no petition to sign, except that you can always talk to your politicians and ask them to stop the genocide. Yes.
From 4 to 5 every Friday, there will be at least a couple dozen people with signs. It's very important to be there. I hope to see as many of you as I can next Friday. Thank you.
There are 2 campaigns you can participate in because historically New York has registered nonprofits that have sent $60 million per year to illegal settler activities. And these groups are fundraising for military units carrying out this genocide. So we must ensure that New York-based groups are not aiding and abetting war crimes. This campaign is called Not on Our Dime because most of these charities are registered. You can take action on that tonight. There's a free will donation basket in the back. Don't leave here without dropping some coin. If you can, it will go a long way. And also there's a group, if you're a member of this church or other churches, it's called Christians for a Free Palestine, following the leadership of Palestinians, including Palestinian Christians, working in solidarity with Muslim, Jewish, and other interfaith peace activists. Their role is to mobilize Christians to take action in solidarity with all those struggling for a free Palestine, to interrupt and challenge Christian Zionism, particularly resisting John Hagee and Kufi, as you heard mentioned in the video, and to resist empire in all those forms. These will be on the back table.
And sorry. I was just gonna say, if anybody's interested in getting involved in anything politically related, there is a group called Peace Action that post-election, no matter how it goes, we are working in statewide groups to push for what's called a JRD, which is a joint resolution of disapproval, having to do with the arms relations, I can't think. Well, the embargo is what we want, but the current shipments that are going on, and it's being put forth by Sanders and 2 others that I can't think of right now. Anyways, if you are so inclined to do that, we have letter signing, letter writing, and I will be around for the next several minutes if you would like to be involved.
I just want people also to know that tonight's presentation was videotaped, and if you'd like to have access to that video, you can contact me, or you can sign up in the back, and we can make that available, and you can share it more widely. Okay. And there is, once again, a basket for free will donations in the back, and all of the donations will go directly to Doctors Without Borders. I'll come back and make myself known.
It's a very powerful presentation.